Hello and welcome to Quiet Parts Loud People. I'm Niko, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Christian Giroux. Christian, if you can, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your career, and then we can dive a little bit more into the intricacies of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, my name's Christian. I've been an audio mixer engineer for like last 12 years or so. Live in Arizona. Uh, have wife and kid, and yeah, get to travel the world and mix concerts. So,
That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that it's a very unique career that you have found. I think when a lot of people think of the music industry, most people think I want to be the drummer, I want to be the bassist, I want to be the lead vocalist. When you first discovered a love for music, has this always been your trajectory? Did you ever tell yourself, I want to be one of the louder components of the music industry, or did you always have more of a niche interest in the engineering and the creation of the sound that people hear when they go to shows?
Yeah, so actually not at all. I had zero, and I didn't even know this existed up until I pretty much got started in it. Um, I had worked I kind of started in doing music stuff when I was probably 6 or 7. My mom had gotten me a guitar for Christmas and kind of picked up that. Uh, my grandpa, I was raised by my grandpa, so grew up listening to like a lot of old '60s and '70s records, so like a lot of like Led Zeppelin, Creedence Clearwater, The Doors, stuff like that. Um, and then around the same time, I kind of got into a lot of the rock bands of that era. So like the Killers, Green Day was probably the biggest one. Like every other, guitar playing 8-year-old gets into, but Black Sabbath, that kind of stuff.
Nice.
And so I kind of started playing music, ended up playing drums and bass and piano, a couple other things like throughout middle school and high school. And I ended up signing up for this class in high school that was offered. I went to kind of an alternative high school. So it was, I guess they call it a polytechnic high school, but
Mm.
um, you go into this high school, and one of your classes through like your sophomore, junior, and senior year is a career path. So at the time, there were 3 career paths. One of them being automotive technologies, one of them being medical assisting, and then one being like veterinary work. Well, I didn't want to do any of those, so they ended up offering this class for a short period, um, and it ended up being so successful that they ended up making it a career pathway as well. And that class was called Rock Band, and rather than like actual orchestral stuff, we went in there and played rock music, so like Kansas and Iron Maiden, yada yada yada.
Mhm.
Well, I was playing in it, and we had like a classic rock band, so like a lot of '60s, '70s stuff. And I was always like, as a player, I was so tired of like not being able to hear myself on stage. And I've always been an audiophile, and like I loved good sounding albums, and especially a lot of the like well produced, well mixed stuff, like even through middle school and high school. And so I was so tired of not being able to hear myself on stage that I just like YouTubed. I was like, basically, how do I hear myself better on stage?
Mm.
What, so on and so forth. Well, that led me down a rabbit hole to learn about sound. And so I basically used YouTube for like the first year to teach myself recording and live sound. Like how to EQ a kick drum, or how do monitors on stage work, or X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Um, so I got into it that way, into the audio, into the sound world. And when I was about 16 or so, I was like, man, I really want to do this more professionally. So I had just started messaging like local Tucson bands, and being like, hey, I'm 16. I really want to get into mixing shows. Like, can I come? Can I come mix your band for free?
Wow.
And so just started like mixing these local Tucson bands, and if can I swear on this, by the way?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I started mixing these like local Tucson bands, and uh, most of them just ate shit. Like the shows were so bad. I mean, and these poor bands, right? Like they're just giving this like 16-year-old kid a chance, and you know, just started doing that, and I kind of had this like conundrum where I didn't think that that was a viable career path. Like I didn't know that it was going to last long term, and so my a little before I got involved mixing for these bands, I actually had gone through the process of applying to the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy, and
Oh
I was
wow.
going to go do that. So I was going to go be a pilot. I was going to try to be a pilot. Um, I ended up getting to my senior year and just decided, like, you know what? Now I'm gonna do the music thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so far, so it's been a relatively good decision. Um, and then yeah, after high school, I worked at a bunch of clubs in Tucson. Same thing. There was like a local Tucson musician. His name's Drew Cooper. He's a country singer, and he was pretty much like the biggest Tucson act um, that I knew. And
Mhm.
so I had like sent him a Facebook message or something like that. And again, I was 18. Uh, I mean, I wasn't even old enough to be in the bars that he was playing at or the clubs that he was playing at. And I was
Right.
like, hey, I don't know much about the music industry kind of thing. And I was like, I would love to do sound for you sometime, blah, blah, blah. And that ended up becoming a great relationship. I worked for him for probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And, you know, toured a ton of the U.S. together, like in a truck and trailer, and then van and trailer eventually. Um, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. And from there, that um, led me to working for this artist out of Texas. His name is William Clark Green. He's also a country act, and so um, worked for him for about 9 months or so, and then I had a child and I got off the road for a little bit. But yeah, and then the William Clark Green connection just led me down a path of getting well connected in the music industry, and it's led me to all the opportunities that have presented itself now.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that you say that country was kind of the first style that you toured with, because I did not meet you at a country show.
No, yeah.
Very, very, very different genre. Do you think that being maybe like polyamorous, having a love for all different kind of sound, has opened up your career to all these opportunities? Is there ever a time where you think to yourself, I really don't like this genre of music, but it's simply a gig? Or do you try to attune yourself to work with artists that you enjoy? Or is it more so just that a job is a job?
Not particularly. I mean, I definitely have my preferences on what I prefer to do or what I'm
Hmm.
better at. But overall, yeah, to be fair, and it's nothing against it. Like I'm not really into a lot of the heavy metal stuff. I did that for a while when I was young and I was into it,
Hmm.
and now I'm just not. It's not my cup of tea anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, so typically anything in the rock or country world, I'm pretty comfortable in. I listen to both of those genres pretty regularly. Uh, there was a time where I was mixing jazz bands all the time. I mixed orchestras.
Wow.
I did. I did a salsa band for like 2 years.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty fluid as far as what genres. Most of the time, if I get a call for something, or um, or just something that piques my interest, like the salsa band, that was something I had gotten asked to do. I think I was 18 or 19 when I started that. When I doing that was just, I was like, man, this just sounds fun. and different, and especially from all the metal stuff that I was used to. And doing that, like, on the mixing side, I at the time I didn't know this, and now I do, like, that I can't mix a salsa band the same way I'm mixing a rock band, right?
Sure.
Or I can't mix a country band. I guess country and rock are pretty similar nowadays, but your approach is dramatically different. In the same way, like, I'm not going to mix a jazz band like I'm mixing a metal band.
Sure.
And so having this overall knowledge of music, and especially going into a new gig, I study the music that I'm going to be mixing a lot. So,
Nice.
If I'm going into a jazz gig with a jazz band, I'm going to listen to their records and, like, know what's going to be the highlight. Or, like, salsa, for example, where, like, rock music, it's loud guitars and drums or whatever it may be. Or salsa, the predominant two pieces of the band are the congas and keys. So, like, you're mixing those loudest, where that, I mean, most of the time those don't exist in a rock band, but
Sure.
your approach is just dramatically different. So, going in there and studying and, like, really having the knowledge of the music you're listening to is pretty critical.
100%.
So,
I appreciate that you definitely seem like someone who tries to do as much research as you can, and I'm sure that the artists appreciate that as well, knowing that
yeah,
you're
my wife hates it because I'm constantly listening to some random genre of
right.
something to try to figure out how to make it sound good or sound like the album.
Sure. How did you, with starting so young on the road, how did you two end up meeting? Was that hard to maintain personal relationships, being someone who had a very almost, I guess you could say, almost like a non-traditional lifestyle? Like you said, like, you had almost went, to the military. You could have almost been, an auto mechanic, or, worked in veterinary. I think you took a very hard left turn in terms of what a career looks like for someone, especially at such a young age. If you don't mind sharing that, how did you two meet, and was there any friction with maybe competing lifestyles with you being in that world?
So, act at the start. So how we met is actually at a concert.
Okay.
She is a fan and friends of Drew, the guy I work for.
Mm.
And we met at one of his shows, and that was, I think it was December or January of December 19, January 2020. Well, we met, started talking, and then, like, I was off tour in that December January timeframe, and then March happened. I was on the road with Drew when we were in Texas. I remember this very specifically, that all of the future shows had gotten canceled, and this is when the COVID pandemic had happened.
Right.
So basically, we made our way back from Texas to Arizona, and I didn't work for probably 7 or 8 months, and so it was good. Like, we spent a lot of time together, especially at the start of our relationship, and then once things kind of opened back up, and I started touring again in, like, 21, 22, somewhere in that range. There was a lot of short runs at first, and then it started to grow back again into the longer and longer tours. When I was working for William Clark Green, it was a lot of fly in and fly out. So I was actually home every week, no matter what.
Oh, nice.
So, like, I'd leave Wednesday or Thursday, fly to Dallas, get on the bus, go do 2 or 3 shows, and then Sunday morning fly home, or Monday morning fly home, and then do it again the next week. And it was great. But our relationship, I think, developed at a great time, because we were able to get to know each other, and then she kind of understood, like, okay, I'm going to be leaving soon. And, going into the weekend warrior kind of touring I did, I was still home every week. And now I'm doing these longer tours that are, 2 or 3 months at a time, and then I'll come home for 2 or 3 months, and then I'll go back out for 2 or 3 months. So now she's pretty used to it, and
Sure.
obviously it's not not the best for the family life, but if you have
Mhm.
like good communication skills and you're taught, especially nowadays, it's so easy to communicate daily. With the
For sure.
technology of like FaceTime and cell phones, like there's no reason why you can't be communicative and have a good relationship.
For sure. Yeah, I think for any relationship that requires travel, even if you can't be present, having your presence be felt is definitely important. Have there been tours where you have been able to bring your family with you, or what does a traditional tour? Maybe that's a better question to start with. When you tour, how does that look from like the time that you start prepping to leave home to the time that you come back? What does that experience look like? Are you on the bus with the artists that you're traveling with? Do you have your own transportation behind them, or does it depend on the size and scale of the artists that you're working with?
Yeah, so it depends on the size and scale. Um, as far as family coming with me, it really depends.
Mm,
Every tour is different. Some tours are family friendly, some are not. Um, and but even then, like riding the bus is I think is a little bit different because you're also in an environment that there's 11 other people with you, right?
right.
So you want every you're not the only person on that bus, so having the respect for the other people that like you're not bringing your wife and child on the road with you,
Hmm.
um, especially because you're there to work and do your job first kind of thing.
Sure.
um, so that varies, but
Mhm.
you know um, upcoming tour I am doing, they will join me for a portion of it.
Nice.
Um, so that'll be pretty fun because that has never happened before. So getting to have that experience is going to be pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So on maybe the last tour that you did, who was that with, and what does a normal day look like for you from the time that you wake up until showtime? How much of your day is dedicated to like setting up, taking down? Do you get a lot of free time? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So it really varies on the position that I'm taking on the tour. Um,
Mhm.
most of I'd say 90% of my work these days is I'm the monitor mixer. So, um, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm doing sound for what the band is hearing on stage. Um, and then the front of house mixer is doing sound for what the audience hears. Now, I do play both roles,
Mhm.
but more often than not, I'm the monitor engineer. So typically, like the last full tour I did was probably the Dance Gavin Dance tour, I think last May or June.
Mhm.
And on that tour, I actually didn't do audio at all. I was a production manager, so I was in charge of all the crew, both on the tour and locally,
Oh wow.
or at least all the stage crew on the tour.
Mhm.
And on that, I mean, the days can get pretty long, especially in a headline position like Dance Gavin
Mhm.
Dance is doing. Um, my days starting at 8 or 9 in the morning. I'm basically doing a venue walkthrough, trying to find out what's going to go well for the day, what the challenges are going to be, looking at things like how much space we have, how to accommodate the support acts that are on the tour, um, in regards to space on stage and scenario, things like that.
Sure.
So usually I'll start with that. Uh, I'll go like get my coffee and breakfast, and then by about 10 or so we're loading in, and in that point like we're it's all hands on deck. We're trying to get the show up as fast as possible. um, Band will come in and sound check, and then we'll get through all the support load ins and sound checks, and then yeah, do like doors will open and then show will start and go. And then after like for example in this scenario, Dance Gavin Dance, like let's say the show would get done at 11 p.m. We'd load the show out, take us an hour or two, and then shower and go to bed. But so usually my day is about from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. for most.
Wow.
Yeah, probably about 90% of the time in the production role.
Sure.
Um, you know, and in between sound checks and doors and showtime, I'm usually doing emails, prepping for the next couple shows, making sure I got, you know, all the ducks are in line there. So
Wow. How, considering how long that day is, how do you find time to sleep? Is that purely in transit to the next
yeah,
show, or are you, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, on occasion, you know, if I'm really feeling it and I know it's gonna, I know that my fatigue is gonna hurt the show in any
mm,
way. Um, you know, I'll just go take a nap on the bus or something. Um, I try to not do that. I'm a super heavy sleeper, so I I have to set like 10 alarms to wake me up.
right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, if I get really fatigued and I know it's going to hurt the show, I'll take a nap
For sure.
and then you know get a little refreshed. But um, you know, days off too.
For sure.
I'll try to relax as much as possible. Um, unless it's something like unless we're in a really cool city that I want to go do something. Um,
Right.
but yeah, most of the time I'll just hang out on the bus during on a day off and you know watch movies or something. And yeah,
Nice. Um, touring with a band like, Dance Gavin Dance, or I know that I think you've also worked with Flyleaf. When you
yep.
first started coming up in your career, was there a moment where you maybe felt like these are like larger than life personalities? Like, did you ever struggle with like maybe being starstruck, or have you had a pretty good mindset throughout your career that these are simply people, that are also doing their job? Was there ever like a phase into like this is the constellation of stars that I am also a part of? Like, how did you manage that mindset?
Yeah, you know, actually, now I don't have um, that feeling. But
Hmm.
when I started with William Clark Green, I was a fan before I got the call for that, and that was kind of like my first real break. And
Hmm.
so the first time meeting him, I was, and the first show we did was an arena.
Whoa.
So uh, I was I was definitely felt way over my head. Um, I was like, you know, am I the right person for this gig? So on and so forth. And anyways, the show ended up going really well. And, you know, the band liked me. Uh, you know, Will ended up liking me a couple days after that once we got comfortable together and all
Sure.
that. Um, but, you know, the funny part to that whole thing is like my first show with them was this arena, right? And the band gets off stage and they're like, "Don't worry, it's not going to be like this all the time. We do a lot of clubs too." Um, and so yeah, yeah. I mean, that was probably like the first real starstruck moment, just because it was the biggest experience I'd had at the time, and
Right.
I hadn't really been involved um, in things of that size yet. So
Sure.
it was one of those things where it's like, you know, as a kid, you're walking into Disneyland for the first time. There's all these cool things around you.
Right.
And once I started working in it more and more often, that kind of dwindled a little bit.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think it happens as much anymore. Um, I don't think, yeah, at least not in the lately that I've had an experience like that.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where like now that I'm doing a lot more, you know, bigger shows and less clubs, um, you know, you're just around it all the time now.
sure.
So, you know, the artist you work for may be friends with somebody, and that friend is like, let's say, Jelly Roll or something like that. So they're around. You're not
Right.
necessarily meeting them, um, but when they're around, you don't get that starstruck feeling as
Sure.
much, especially just being around it as often as I am at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that is probably one of the cooler ways to be introduced to that lifestyle. One thing that this podcast tries to touch on and tries to maybe make more aware for people is I think oftentimes people have this parasocial dynamic with artists where they forget that they are people, like they are people
Yeah,
that
totally.
enter. So I think that that's cool that you have been able to immerse yourself in this lifestyle that is congruent to just the humanity of the artists. And I think it's a really incredible story considering that you started, by YouTubing how to
Yeah,
do this stuff. I think that for me personally would be frightening because there is no like backspace or undo in a live show. So like,
totally. Yeah,
you know,
it's high pressure.
yeah, for sure. With that, I know you said like the first few shows that you did, were maybe a little rough. How much of what you taught yourself stayed through your learning experience with other artists? Was there a lot of unlearning that you had to do? Or did you feel like you felt pretty prepared for the job, based on what you were teaching yourself?
Um, it's probably 50-50. I
Mhm.
would say I'm sure that there are occasions that I had to unlearn some techniques or whatever that may be. I would say the big one, like I said, is mixing, like trying to mix the same band or different bands the same. Like
Okay.
going up, like I said, mixing a jazz band the same way you're mixing a metal band. You can't. It's
Right.
like jazz people don't want to hear a kick drum at 100 dB, right?
Right.
Where metal, that's the energy of it.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean the fundamentals in audio are really all the same.
Mhm.
Um, the the stepping stones that you have, or the things you learn at the start are really important. All right,
Mhm.
um, and not to dive too much into the technical side of this, but like how
Sure.
to you know the proper way to put a microphone on something, or the type of microphone you're using for the application, so on and so forth. Like, is those were the fundamentals that I learned, and a lot of those play out um, over multiple genres.
Sure.
But your approach to how you're working with those tools varies from artist to artist. Now, in the case that in the case of, like, learning new things or working with artists, the big thing is, like I said about preparation, study.
Mhm.
I still all constantly am studying new technologies, new techniques, um, and that's like it's super critical. I mean,
For
if
sure.
learning and adapting to the technology is super important. um, and I think once you get stuck in the mindset of this, it works well this way, I'm not going to change it.
Mm.
I think you kind of pigeonhole yourself or get yourself into this, like, this box that
Sure.
is really hard to get out of, because for a
Mhm.
long time when I first started, I felt like that. I was like, well, this works, I'm not changing it, so on and so forth. And having some artists that really were knowledgeable about the music, or about the technological side, and them being like, hey, can we change this in this way or this in this way, that really helped me, because
Sure.
ultimately at the end of the day, right, like, they're my boss, they're writing my paychecks. I cannot have an ego in this.
Right. For sure.
And my goal, and this is one thing I've ingrained in myself, is being of service,
For
right?
sure.
Like, I'm not here to serve myself, I'm here to serve the person I'm working for.
Mm.
And if I can contribute, they call me for whatever reason
Mhm.
to do this job. But my goal is ultimately, like I said, to serve them, and um, to create something. Like, if I'm the front of house mixer, they might want the audience experience to be um, one way and I want it to be the other. But I, having a good relationship with the artist too also matters.
Sure.
There's been some scenarios where, the artist may want something and physically I can just not, like, and I don't mean physically and able-bodied, but the physics of the room or something like that.
Right.
And I'll tell you, and this goes back to having the good relationship. If the artist knows that you're doing everything in your power to
100%.
make this, happen for them, they're going to be on, you're going to be on their good side.
Right.
Um, and I think that's important, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the artist is trying to, especially as a front of house engineer, your goal is to connect the artist that's on stage with the audience.
Yeah.
Especially, the audience, they're paying their hard-earned money to come to a show, and you want to give them the best experience that they can get. And in the same way, the artist is paying you to do that job for them, right? And if the artist wants the show delivered a certain way, that's up to you to do that for them. And with no, like I said, no ego involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think the acts of service thing, uh, you know, going down a rabbit hole of information here, but
No, I love
you
it.
know, yeah, just adapting, being adaptable and um, serving their best interest rather than your own is super super important.
With that, that kind of created a thought pattern or a path for me talking about, say that you do have this established trust with an artist. Are there ever times where you have to maybe have a hard conversation with them to say, I know that you're perceiving it, a certain way, but based on my experience, changing this and this would create a better experience? Is there ever a time where you, maybe not in an ego way that you feel like you know more, but is there ever a
Yeah,
time where you know a truth where it's like, hey, like this is the formula to create this sound? um do you trust me enough to maybe diverge from the way that you as the artist intends it, or is that something that you don't feel comfortable doing? How do you balance that sensation if that ever comes up?
it all depends on the artist.
Mm,
I think have if you have a good enough relationship with them,
mhm.
um, that they're trusting you, then yeah, it's great. There's been some scenarios where, hey, like, I brought up, hey, can we try this? And it's a no, we really like to keep it this way. And it's like, okay, cool, great. Like, I can make it work.
Yeah.
Um, especially in my experience, I've gone through so many things, and I will probably continue to go through them that I'm me as a mixer, I'm probably not happy with. But
Sure.
like I said, my goal is not to serve myself.
Right.
And if and going back to the thing about this salsa band that I'd worked for, at the start, I was mixing this salsa band with like a really loud kick drum, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds great," blah blah blah. And the artist had come out to hear the mix and was like, "Oh, this is all wrong." And I
Right.
was like, "Well, what's wrong about it?" And they're like, "Oh, kick drum needs to be way down, and we need to bring the keys and congas up a lot." They're like, that's the forefront of the music.
Sure.
And uh, being that I was inexperienced at the time, I didn't know, and I was like, well, can you send me some records that I can listen to really understand?
Sure.
So I went through this repertoire of salsa music, and I was like, oh, they're right,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
that was a part that was hard for me, especially being, when I was much younger, like every 18-year-old is, you're pretty naive and arrogant. And after getting to that point, um, especially because, this band, like, they were taking a chance on a young 18-year-old mixing their show with very little experience, right?
Right.
Um, and being able to, like, really, the artist has been working on this music, or whether it be their own or whether they're playing covers or so on and so forth,
Hmm.
for their entire careers. So, and the artist has a vision that of how they want things to go. Um, and so I think approaching these scenarios, like I said, in the relationship side, like of allowing them to like really share their vision, and then as you as the engineer being able to be like, okay, here's how I think we can get there,
Mm-hmm.
and use those steps to try to get to that result, and then match those steps every single day, so that way consistently night to night you're achieving that same result. That's super important.
Yeah.
But the on the artistic standpoint, like maybe they've been working on this record for 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time you're hearing this music. For them,
Right.
they've heard this music hundreds of times already, so
Yeah.
they already know what it should get. I mean, there's been times where I've called up the mixing engineer for an album of an artist I've worked for, and I'm like, how did you get this sound or this sound or
Wow.
this
That's
sound?
smart.
Because I want to try to recreate the album as best as I can. Now,
Right.
in a live scenario, there, like I said, there are limitations of the
Mm-hmm.
whether it be physics or whatever. But my goal as an engineer, people are coming to the show because they heard the album, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my goal as an engineer is to try to recreate that album as best as I can, and um, but add whatever live energy that entails.
Sure.
So sometimes, like I said, a jazz band, there might be very little or no low end on, I might not use the subwoofers at all. Where other scenarios, I want tons of it. If I'm doing an EDM show, I want lots of bass.
Right.
So it just varies. And I think having a good conversation with the artist and really like working together on achieving that result is super important. And, I think that's really what is the difference between a good engineer and a great one, is uh, being able to be receptive of
Sure.
whether it be criticism or uh, criticism or advice. I think being
Mm-hmm.
able to take that and then use whether it be the criticism or advice to further better yourself. I mean, had I stuck with the same way I mixed shows 10 years ago, I don't think that I would be in the position I'm at now at all.
Yeah.
And I think allowing the artist to like have conversations with me about musical styles or their interests or goals, that's what's helped, because I've taken that into consideration and adapted to it and used it.
I love that because I think fans of music have a perception when they hear an artist that it's connection over perfection, right? It's
Yeah, absolutely.
what an artist is giving the audience in that moment that makes it feel real, makes whatever song that they have created feel like a shared experience for people. But I feel like there is such a big overlooking, because your job is to make that connection feel perfect for the audience. So it is
Yeah,
in some
totally.
ways connection over perfection, but also, do you feel like you're trying to reach a sense of perfection, whether it's, like replicating that studio sound with a little more emotion, or how do you measure what a successful show is?
So yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a funny answer, but I think the whole thing about a perfect show is really that no one came up to me and said it sounded horrible or whatever, right? Because that's an extension of the artist, and as the engineer, I am an extension of the artist. So, being able to give the audience the best fan experience is super important. No, if no one asks for refunds, that's a plus. And you know, going into this conversation, it's like, uh, so many of these fans, right? Like they're working 40 hours a week, or whether it be a dead end job or this career that they love, or they're going through a divorce or whatever the situation may be, like this concert might be the best thing that's happened to them all week that they're
Sure.
spending their 20, 30, $40 on, right? And I know some people are going to be like, concerts aren't $20 anymore, but um, like, yeah, I think it's super important, and if it gives people like this chance to escape from the cruel world that's going on outside the venue doors, um, that's ultimately my goal. Is to these people are, like I said, they're spending their hard-earned money to come see a show. You want to give them the best show you can give them.
For sure.
And if you're not, like, it's not only a disservice to yourself, but like to the fans and the artist, and this goes back to the preparation side. Like, if you're well prepared and you're using all the tools at your disposal to create the best result, like, that falls on you.
Right.
And I I don't take it for granted that this is one of the coolest jobs that I could possibly ever do. And even in the times where I'm running on an hour of sleep and I'm going from load in at X, Y, and Z spot to getting on a plane to jump to the next show and then doing that show and then flying back to the other tour or whatever, it's not lost on me that this is one of the coolest careers ever, even 12 years in.
Right.
And as hard as this is, sometimes on the family lifestyle, sometimes on the body,
Sure.
or mentally, whatever it may be, this sure beats cleaning toilets. I'll tell you that much.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had not thought of it in the way that you framed it, but to your point about a perfect show would be no one coming up to you and saying, hey, I want my money back. I have never left a show thinking that was mixed so well. My thought has always been they sounded exactly like they did on the album, which is a testament to
That's
you.
you know what though? That's the best. When people tell me, like, they're not directly complimenting me, I understand that.
Right.
Like, because like I said, you're an extension of the artist. But when I hear that, whether it be from backstage, one of the friends of the artist or something like that, like, wow, you guys sounded amazing. That is the most honoring compliment, whether they meant to give it or not,
Mm-hmm.
that I could ever get. Especially because a lot of times, some of the artists I work for, I'm a huge fan of the engineers who are mixing these records.
Right.
And these are people I looked up to 10 years ago and still do. I know Dance Gavin Dance, the engineer that mixes their records, is a guy named Chris Crummett. And he's mixed a ton of albums in, the rock and metal world.
Mm-hmm.
And I look up to that guy. And not that I'm mixing front of house for Dance Gavin Dance, but like, my goal is, like I said, ultimately to recreate what they're doing.
Sure.
And if that means I have to ask them, hey, what did you do on this? 99% of the time, the people involved in the album want the live shows to go well too.
For sure.
I'd mixed this band. This is a little side story, but I'd mixed this band called Stolas,
Mm-hmm.
which was one of the members of Dance Gavin Dance's old band. And we were doing Troubadour in LA. And the band's engineer had come to the show. And we got done with the show. And I was super nervous because I look up to this guy a lot, right?
Yeah.
And done the show. The show went very well. And he had come up to me after the show. He goes, that was one of the best sounding shows I've ever heard in my life.
Whoa.
And he said, most concerts you see nowadays, it's super loud drums. You can barely hear the guitars, so on and so forth. And he goes, everything you could pick out every sound on the thing.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I made it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is actually a good question, I think, for you, because you've done this for 12 years. You have made you put 100% into it. At what point Was do you feel like there was a distinct point where you told yourself, I have made it in the industry? Was there a certain job? Was there anything that made you say like this is what I do, truly for a living and I feel like I have made it, or do you feel still like you're trying to reach that point?
I I still feel like I'm trying to reach that point.
Really?
I definitely feel, even now, I still feel imposter syndrome
Hmm,
constantly. I always feel like I don't deserve to be where I'm at.
really?
Oh yeah, like I mean, constantly. Uh, I definitely I feel that often. Now, I would say a point where I'm like, this is working or this is success is when I um, probably went full time into the music industry when I was 17 or 18, um, and I'd quit working this like side restaurant job, and
Mhm.
I was like, I can make more money doing sound at bars than I can, you know, cutting onions
Right.
in the back of this restaurant. And so I'd quit that job, and that was like, oh, I've made it. And looking back on it, I had a lot to learn,
Sure.
but when I could make my income and my living from this career, like
Mhm.
even when I was 18, and I was in college, and um, I dropped out of college and I failed so many college classes because I was touring more than I was going to
Wow.
class.
Yeah.
And my live sound professor, I still work with him locally to this day, but I failed his class because I was doing live sound and more than going to his class. And I was like, "You're gonna fail me over this?" He's like, "Yeah, you didn't go to class." I was like, "Ah, all right."
Wow.
So I ended up dropping out of college, but um, yeah, I think it's like, yeah, I still don't feel like I've made it. I don't think I will have made it ever.
Hmm.
Uh, there's definitely been experiences where I'm like, all the hard work is that I've done thus far has made this point worth it, or has been worth it
Sure.
because of this result. Um, I filled in for a friend of mine with this band called Flatland Cavalry.
Okay.
They're a country band, and my my friend couldn't do a couple shows, so I had flown out to cover for him, and that was one of my. This is actually the second time, but we had done a stadium show with Luke Combs, and like at Gillette Stadium in Boston, near Boston, and I was just looking around. I was like, "This is the most." I was standing out front after our show, and I was like, "This is the most insane experience I've ever had."
Right.
Right. And prior to that, I was working for this country artist named Kimberly Dunn, and she opened for Leonard Skinner in Houston at what's it called, Toyota Center. It's an arena there,
Hmm.
and up and I'd done this Toyota Center show, and I'm like, wow, I'm mixing the opener on a Leonard Skinner show. Like, this is crazy. And then a couple years ago, um, I had gotten a call to go work for the artist Jewel, and with Jewel, like Jewel was massive back in the
Yeah.
day. So like all of these experiences have led. Like I said, I still don't feel like I've made
Hmm.
it, and I still don't feel like I'm in a position that um, I've reached it. I don't think that that'll happen until I'm mixing like the Beatles. Not the Beatles,
The
but like
equivalent of today's
Taylor.
Beatles.
Yeah, which is probably Taylor Swift. Let's be honest. But
Right.
yeah, I don't think anyone sells more tickets than she
For
does.
sure.
So
Yeah. I am curious what your thoughts are on this because I feel like there's probably a decent balance of people in your field that struggle with imposter syndrome, but then there are also people who probably struggle with Dunning-Kruger effect, where they think that they know everything. I think in some ways it is healthier to have a bit of imposter syndrome and always feel like there is more to learn than to have Dunning Kruger where you're just like, I know everything. I think people that maybe think that they have reached it will stay there forever because they've reached that point. Do you feel like staying hungry in the industry maybe provides more opportunities for you to have the right mentality to connect with better artists? Or how do you balance your ego to be able to say, like, I do know enough to work with someone like Taylor Swift, but am humble enough to be thankful for the opportunity? Do you feel like there is a bit of balancing for your mentality in that way? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think once you said you've made it, that's the highest you're ever going to
Mhm.
go. I had that when I was young, and it hurt me. It
Mhm.
hurt my career dramatically because I felt I know everything, and you know, no one can teach me anything. I can't learn anything else. I've got it. And I stayed at that level, mixing like 200-person clubs or 100-person clubs for probably 3 or 4 years after that.
Right.
And once I got out of that mindset and I was like, you know what? I don't know everything. I have a lot more work to go. All of a sudden, all these doors opened, right? And I'm a person of faith, and so like I'm a Christian, and for me, I think the Bible teaches us to be humble, and in my opinion, I think my wife and I were just talking about this the other day. True humility is saying I'm very good at this thing, but I'm not good at this,
Sure.
right? And saying I'm very good at this doesn't mean that there's not more to learn,
100%.
but it definitely means that I'm confident enough that I have the skills to do this,
Mhm.
but I'm not confident enough to think I deserve to be here.
I love that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think that's super important. Especially for me, like now that unfortunately, I can't get out of it. But this like imposter syndrome thing is, I think it makes you hungry.
Sure.
That you're like, this opportunity presents itself. You're going to work harder because you don't deserve you don't believe you deserve to be there, and because you're working harder and putting more effort into it, then you develop those skills at that level. Well, and then the next opportunity presents itself, and you take a step up.
Sure.
Maybe you're going from theaters to amphitheaters, and then the same thing. You're like, I don't deserve to be mixing amphitheaters, and so on and so forth. Um, and then eventually you get to a point where you might be mixing Shakira on a stadium, and I guarantee you that most of the engineers at the A level all feel the same way.
Right.
That, hey, I'm confident enough that I'm good. Like, I know that I'm good at this, but it can stop at any moment. Number one, and number two, um, you know, number one, it could stop at any moment, and number two, I don't deserve to be here. You know, I think that's. I think if everyone carried that mentality, um, growth would be far uh, not as far
Sure.
fetched,
Yeah.
or not as far away.
Mhm.
Um, I think if everyone approached that like the hunger and desire to be to get better and be more successful would grow, right?
Absolutely. With that though, we mentioned earlier, there's no undo button or backspace in a live show.
Yeah.
Does that compound your feelings of imposter syndrome if you have a bad show? How do you take that experience if, you know, everything that could go wrong goes wrong? How long do you sit in that before you say, "Hey, this is a learning opportunity," or what is your process to overcome a bad night? And like maybe we talked about it before. If someone says, "Man, that sounded like shit," if you get that feedback, what are the steps for you to process that in a healthy way?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I mean, I still have bad shows. You know, like we talked about earlier, like I had a bad show last night.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, you know, I sat on it and dwelled on it for the drive home. And then by the time I went to bed and woke up, I was like, all right, that was yesterday. I
Right.
got it. And, you know, I got another show later this afternoon. And, you know, it's going to be different today. Like, different room, different band. Um, you know, all these variables come into play. But yeah, I think if you use those bad things, I think it's okay to dwell on them for a little bit because I think that is healthy. Because dwelling on it, you're gonna figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong, and then how to fix it.
For sure.
Or if you're just like, oh, it went wrong, whatever, and then go into the next one, well, you're not correcting the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having that approach of like, you know, one of the guys I work with on Dance Gavin Dance, his name's Steve Litcher. Him and I, like, him and I just have this same mentality. We constantly want things to go super well,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we have a very high standard for the work we have, for the work we're providing, for what we're giving out, so on and so forth. And I think that's just such a good mentality. But you know, like it sometimes it can't be healthy. I mean, I'm a admitted perfectionist, and I constantly am. Even if it's a good show or a great, it could be a 10 out of 10 show to everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, I'm like, eh. And so I don't know. I do because I have such a high standard all the time. It can be detrimental to me, um, or to my own, you know, like mental well being.
Sure.
But you know, the more and more I do it, I just don't. I try to not dwell on it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd rather just look at it like you said as like a learning opportunity. You figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong, and then fix the problem for the next one, and then move on. You know.
For sure. I
Um,
I feel like sometimes being a perfectionist can cause almost like a paralysis by analysis. Is there ever a time where you're mixing something or you're trying to get something, you know, stage ready because you value the perfect experience so much? Do you ever second guess yourself like, does this actually sound right? If you ever do experience that, what is the best way for you to resolve it? Do you immediately you know, like approach the artist and say, hey, you know, I'm trying to get this right, or how does first of all, does that ever happen? And if it does happen, how do you overcome that?
um, I don't think that really happens often these days because I do so much preparation.
Sure.
Um, you know, what's the term? Proper planning beats piss poor performance, or
Sure. Yeah.
whatever the saying is. Oh, proper planning prevents piss poor
Love that.
performance.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so I think going into it with if you plan well enough, there will always be something that goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like um, that's just a given.
Sure.
Technology or scenarios outside of your own control.
Mm-hmm.
But if with proper planning, you can minimize as many of those variables as possible. You're setting yourself up for success. Um, I don't think there's really ever been a scenario where I'm like, where something goes wrong that I necessarily can't fix in the moment, or it's a showstopper.
Good.
Usually, I always have a not usually, always I have a backup of something. Whatever piece of gear it is, I always have a backup of
Right.
it. Because it's technology and technology breaks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always something that can happen. But I think if you go into anything unprepared, the world is gonna catch you. You know,
Right.
the world's gonna call you out on it, and
Yeah.
it's just gonna, if you're unprepared for something going in, well, guess what? Whatever you're unprepared for is going to happen.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably yeah, proper planning, I think, is the best way to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that didn't necessarily answer the question, but um, I think, like I said, it's more like it's risk mitigation, right?
For sure.
So yes, stuff goes wrong all the time, and like I said, having a backup and knowing how to fix something. I had this conversation with someone years and years ago um, when negotiating a deal
Mm-hmm.
on doing a show, and I was like, "Hey," I'd given them my price, and they had said, "Oh, it's too expensive. Basically, so and so's cousin can do it cheaper." I said, "Well, okay, no big deal." I said, "But to be fair, you're not paying me to mix the show."
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "Well, what do you mean? That's what we're paying you for." I was like, "Well, you're not. You're paying me to know how to fix stuff when it goes wrong, because this is technology and stuff goes wrong."
Mm-hmm.
And 5 minutes before, I'm not joking, they did hire me. 5 minutes before the show, the left side of the PA system completely went out.
Right.
And so we held doors, and me and a couple of the other audio crew guys are literally pulling components apart and like soldering wires to get this fixed. And it was like the most like crazy scenario. Like, I'm sure the client thought that we did it on
Right.
purpose to like,
To prove
right?
a point. Yeah.
I promise you, we did not do it on purpose.
Right.
Um, but yeah, there was one of those things where I was like, and we pulled it together, and the show still happened. They held doors for I don't remember how much time they held doors, but a show still happened and went off without a hitch. But I'm that was probably the most crazy experience of something ever going wrong, because I was like, we are not getting sound at all
Right.
out of this side of this PA. And that would have been a showstopper.
Yeah.
Like, if that had gone
For
kaput and we
sure.
couldn't have fixed it, that would have been a showstopper, and there would have been a lot of angry fans,
Yeah.
for sure.
100%. That's
So,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
I do have one last question for you.
Yeah.
You are so immersed, I think, into the technical components of music. Hearing you say earlier that you have always kind of been an audiophile, that I think maybe your ear for music has kind of helped, navigate you into this career. When you listen to music for pleasure, is it hard to separate an analytical mindset from music to simply enjoy it? Or if you hear a song, are you immediately thinking about it in terms of how you work with it? Or are you able to separate it and just say, like, that was a good tune?
Yeah, I can separate it.
Yeah.
I'm really big into songwriting, like for actual personal listening. Um, these days, I'm on. I listen to a lot of folk music,
Nice. Okay.
um, and and like songwriters, and a lot of podcasts.
Nice.
But that's probably the majority of what I'm listening to these days, and so there's not a lot of production value to it.
That's cool.
I listen to a lot of like Bob Dylan and John Prine and Neil Young, and um, but one of my favorite bands of all time is this band out of the UK. They're out of Wales, I think, called Catfish and the Bottlemen.
Okay.
And when I listen to them, I'm listening as a fan,
Love
like,
that.
because they just have good songs.
Mhm.
I'm not listening to the production side at all. Like, yes, it's well mixed, and I can pick out if I wanted to, and I got analytical, I could pick out pieces. But I'm just listening as a fan.
That's cool.
But yeah, I think it's easy for me to
Mhm.
separate those two at this point. I'm sure there was a period where I was overly analytical and like, this record doesn't sound good or whatever,
Right.
but it's a good song. But yeah, I think it's easy for me to distinguish now.
That's cool.
I kind of wanted to touch, because I thought this was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about AI earlier,
Yes.
yeah, like AI in the music industry, I know like you had mentioned, you know, some people are just so anti these days, right? And at the start I was, but you know, like I told you earlier, this Joe Walsh quote, you know, I think it was like Ringo's 80th birthday party, you know, Ringo Starr's 80th birthday party, and they'd asked him about like AI and music, and he's like, when AI can throw a TV set into a pool from the seventh balcony of a hotel room, then I'll worry about it, you know.
Right.
And I think that's like there's I think that's the perfect quote for that. Like technology, AI is a tool, and like I mentioned, if it's used well and for good purpose, it's good.
For sure.
If it's used maliciously, then it's obvious it's bad, right? But I don't think that AI is really taking away the artistic side of music. No one's going to go to a show that there's not a person on stage and they're looking at a MacBook
Right.
screensaver playing. Like, no one's going to pay money for that. There's no value to it to them. Um, and that I'm going to eat my words, but no one's going to be paying money to go watch a laptop on stage. And I know I'll probably catch flack for this, but like that is very different than a DJ, because a DJ is a performer.
Sure.
And I know a lot of people in the rock and metal world are like, oh, DJ's just pressing buttons. It's like you're doing the exact same thing on your guitar. You're just pressing buttons, right?
That is very true.
Like a DJ is a performer and an entertainer, and most of the thing is with the DJ though is they're doing most of their work in the studio that they're trying to recreate or play back in a live scenario. They're, in my opinion, they're both the same thing. You know, whether it be a guitar player or a DJ, they're both entertainers, and that's what they're here to present their music to the fans that like to listen to it. But you know, in the AI perspective, I don't think it's ever going to replace musicians, and whether that musician's a DJ or a producer or a guitar player, I don't think there's ever going to be a full replacement. I think people are always going to find the value in like going to see a real band or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think to your point, I don't think that well, how do I word this? Not everyone understands how many takes an artist gives to make the sound that you hear on an album. They will produce, multiple takes of their raw audio. And then it is literally your job to enhance that in a way that is more palatable for people to listen to. You know, Melodyne exists for a reason. Autotune exists for a reason. You do have technological components that producers use, audio mixers use to create a sound that people resonate with. So, using AI, for example, I had a conversation with an artist recently who said, the only difference between how I use AI and how I would use Bandcamp is with Bandcamp, I have to scroll until I find the drum kit that I want to add onto my track. AI just suggested one, and if I like it, I keep it. So it is kind of similar to like how you said, the printing press versus the printer at home. People years ago said
like horse and buggy or the Model T, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's just faster and more efficient.
For sure.
I think if you're using AI to write a song for you, fully mixed start to finish, blah blah blah, I think that's kind of lazy.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it necessarily. I think there's no artistic input to it. But if you're using AI and hey, I can't figure out the next line of this song that I'm trying to write, and you're like, here's my AI, here's my lyrics I'm going to put into AI. Can you write me this one line? And if it works, it's a great tool. And you have the choice whether or not to use it.
Really?
No one's forcing you to like write AI songs
for sure
or whatever. I mean, you have the option to to write your own songs, right? The one thing I do find kind of weird is like all these AI artists on Spotify now. I do think that's kind of weird, but uh, I think if you're a good enough artist and you write good enough songs, um, if you're better than AI,
So,
it's gonna beat AI, right?
right.
If you're writing songs that are subpar to what a computer or a server is making, then like get better at writing songs.
Right. Yeah.
That's probably controversial, but um, yeah, I think that's probably a good. Yeah, I don't know how to close. I don't know how to close that out,
No,
but yeah,
I agree. And I think to your point, I think that it makes sense for you to have that belief because of your mentality of always wanting to do better. So I think for you, in the same way that it's like you don't want to feel like you've made it, you want to have that internal competition with yourself to say I want to produce something that does sound better, than what a generic algorithm might be able to produce. Because if what separates
yeah,
us from AI is our, writing with our humanity or giving someone emotional ownership over something that you feel, think, and then create, it's important to have that come from a place that feels authentic. And if you do need a tool like AI to help maybe round out that experience. I had a conversation with the frontman from Freshman 15, Davey Fortner. He said the amount of artists that he knew in the early 2000s who would literally go on thesaurus.com to find, a rhyme for a word that they were trying to use. Or, people have been using technology to do these things.
yeah,
AI just takes it and just streamlines it. So it's nice to have a unique perspective for someone who I think a lot of people would maybe assume that you would have a negative connotation for AI because like we had mentioned earlier, there's this belief that AI is coming for, every job in every market and that everyone is going to be displaced. So it is reassuring in some ways to hear from you that we can work in tandem with it and that it is not as uh, doom and gloom as I think a lot of people would have us believe. So
yeah,
that's refreshing for sure.
yeah. I mean, I think in some scenarios, I will agree, it's decimating industries.
Mhm.
Accounting, technology, like Google, whatever these tech companies.
Sure.
Yeah, it is decimating the lower tier of jobs in those fields.
Mhm.
But I think it's really important to adapt. And going back to the horse and buggy versus Model T conversation, tons of people hated the idea of a car, tons of them, and they were like, I'm going to stick with the horse and buggy. But like, it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
And whether or not you have the choice whether or not to adapt to what it is,
Mhm.
or where it is now. And I think, you know, not a single person in today's world, minus the cowboy that I used to work on the ranch with, is probably saying, "Oh man, I wish I still had a horse and buggy."
Right.
Everyone's like, "No, I love my electric Tesla."
Right.
Right? Not everyone's saying they love their electric Tesla, but
Right. But their vehicle, for
yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they love their vehicle, right? It beats walking.
Mhm.
Um, and I think AI is the exact same. Um, I think nowadays so many people are very doom and gloom,
Mhm.
and I think everyone's like, anytime there's a technological advancement, it's the world is ending. Everyone thinks the world is ending. The world has been here for a long time,
Right.
and whether or not civilization is here, the world will be here a long time after us.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's as detrimental as people think. And I don't, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a optimist in that scenario, but I don't think, I don't think it's world-ending technology by
Mhm.
any stretch.
And I also think that if we as society are reluctant to adapt to it, we don't get to help shape the way that it can enhance our life. So I think
Yeah.
more people probably need to accept that it is here, and that will help navigate conversations about how to, limit whether or not it's overreaching in our lives. We can help shape whatever, laws come about on how, intrusive it can be in our personal life, or, the in whatever ways it may reach or overreach. So yeah, having a reluctance to partake in that conversation leaves that conversation to people who may not have our best interests. So yeah, I would agree that if it is here, taking part in it and helping shape it is definitely important.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, don't use it. I mean, that's you don't
Simple.
like drugs, don't do drugs. Like,
Right.
I don't know. It's
Right.
you don't like drinking, don't drink.
Right.
Like, you can't criticize other. Obviously there's some, like, I won't go down the political rabbit hole of you know the environmental side of it. But we're going to adapt.
For sure.
We're you know we're humans. That's what we do. Um, but yeah, it's not going anywhere.
For sure. Absolutely. Christian, you tour often. When is the next
Yep.
time, if you are able to talk about it, do you have anything in terms of touring planned up this year, that if people want to see you, at work, live doing this, where are some places that we might be able to find you, whether, out on tour or even online, if you're comfortable sharing your social medias? Where can we find you and support you?
Yeah, so I'll be out with Dance Gavin Dance in May and June of this year. Um, and then I go immediately from that tour into a month with Flyleaf, doing a US run. And then, let's see, a couple festivals with Dance Gavin Dance this year. You got to check their web. I don't remember the dates,
Sure.
so you got to check their websites. But Dance Gavin Dance just announced Europe in September, I believe. Um, so I'll be there with them for that. But yeah, I'm excited for all of them. I mean, there's some good stuff coming out. Flyleaf's July tour's amazing. It's 20th anniversary. That one's going to be hard because I think every show is sold out already.
Wow.
But
Okay.
I don't quote me on that,
Yeah.
but I think so. But yeah, so come to a show. I'll be around.
Cool. Okay.
I
You
enjoy.
you said in May that you'll be with Dance Gavin Dance, so you'll be at Rockville?
I will be at Rockville.
Cool.
I'll be there with Flyleaf and Dance Gavin Dance.
Okay.
Actually.
I will see you there.
Yeah.
I already have my ticket. So,
Okay, great.
yeah. Cool.
Right on. Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll figure something out. But and then as far as audio updates, my Instagram is 3 Rivers Audio. That's where I post any audio related content. So
Perfect. Cool. Well, that will be in the show notes as well for anyone who is
great.
open to checking you out. If people are interested in having their work mixed, I know that it sounds like you have a full schedule this year, but are you in a position right now where you are accepting artists who might be looking for someone to help mix or produce their music?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really do recording work, but I do mix live albums.
Okay.
That's kind of my specialty. So, in the event that someone needs a live album mixed, I'm definitely open to that. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, Christian, it was a pleasure getting to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for all the good questions. I enjoyed it.
Cool, man. Thank you. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.